What's the difference between you and most billionaires? Well, besides the number of zeros in your net worth, of course, it's probably that they work a lot less than you do. You might be working really hard and struggling to get ahead and trying to figure out why. Well, if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a consultant, if you're a thought leader in any way, if you work with your brain, you might be working too much. I recently had the opportunity to spend 3 or 4 days with Richard Koch, worth about $1.6 billion and the author of the 80-20 principle. And I found out that he works about half a day a week. He's worth $1 billion. Well, sure. Number one, he's an author. He's trying to sell books. He wants to be a little sensational, but probably he doesn't really work half a day, right? That's what I thought. And number two is he's a billionaire, so he can afford to take most of the time off, right? That's what billionaires do. They've got plenty of money. They just sit around and goof off, right? Well, not so much. What I found from talking not only with Richard, but also with his staff is that he really does work about half a day a week. And he's done that for decades, long before he was a billionaire. So in other words, he has become a billionaire by working half a day a week, not he's working half a day a week because he's a billionaire. So then I thought, well, sure, he's a billionaire. He can afford to get away with it. But what about his staff? So Richard owns about 7 companies. And so I inquired about the CEOs that work for him that run these companies. Surely they're not working limited hours. They're probably working 80-hour weeks, right? So I asked about it. And here's what I learned from his assistant, Ricardo. He said, well, if it's a founding CEO, like we've bought his company, but that CEO started it, then he's probably working a lot of hours and he's working too hard and he hasn't learned to delegate well, but we teach him how to delegate. And if he can't learn it and he can't give away a lot and work less, then we replace him. I thought, interesting. I said, all right, well, let's suppose that you do replace him and you bring in your own person. How much is that CEO going to be working? He said, probably 5 to 10 hours a week. I said, really? Well, what about you, Ricardo? You manage all of his assistants, all of his staff. You buy and sell houses for him. Like, you have a really responsible position. You must be really busy. How many hours do you work? And he said, well, I usually come in at 9 o'clock and I go home at 2. So here you have not just the top of the organization, but at all levels of the organization, you have people who have figured out how to focus on the 20% of their activities that actually yield 80% of the results. They've figured out how to do the right thing, to work on the things that really matter. They aren't working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. They're actually working 5, 10, 20, 30 hours a week, but they're getting much bigger results than maybe you or I are used to getting. So how do you do that? Well, you've got to figure out what's the 20 and what's the 80. What are the 20% of activities that actually yield 80% of the results, and then spend more of your time on that and figure out how to eliminate or automate or delegate the 80% that actually are not creating outsized value. And I think if you do that, you'll find yourself getting closer to that billionaire status. I think the more you focus on doing the right things, the more zeros you can add to that net worth of yours. If you found this helpful, like and follow for more, or visit growwithtim.com.